The bank manager's face went pale as death when Katherine Zimmerman demanded to see her account ledger, and in that terrible moment before he even spoke, she knew everything she had worked for was gone. "Miss Zimmerman, I'm afraid there's been a situation," Mr. Phillips stammered, his fingers trembling as he opened the heavy book. "Your fiancé, Mr. Gerald Hutchins, withdrew the entire balance 3 days ago. He had the authorization papers you signed." The floor seemed to tilt beneath Katherine's feet. The authorization papers. She had signed them so trustingly just 2 weeks before, when Gerald said he wanted to make some investments on their behalf. Their wedding was supposed to be in 1 month. He had kissed her hand and promised her a beautiful future in San Francisco, away from the dust and difficulty of Hawthorne, Nevada. Now, in August of 1883, she stood in the Hawthorne Bank with nothing but the dress on her back and the crushing weight of betrayal pressing down on her chest. "How much?" she whispered, though she knew the answer. $3,214, Mr. Phillips said quietly. "Miss Zimmerman, I'm truly sorry if I had known his intentions." Katherine walked out of the bank in a daze. $3,000. It had taken her 6 years to save that money, working as a seamstress, taking in laundry, doing alterations late into the night by candlelight until her eyes burned. Her parents had died of cholera when she was 17, leaving her their small house but little else. She had been so careful, so frugal, planning for a future that now lay in shattered pieces at her feet. The streets of Hawthorne shimmered in the afternoon heat, the desert sun beating down mercilessly on the small mining town. Katherine made her way back to the boarding house where she had been staying since putting her house up for sale. That sale had been Gerald's idea too. "We won't need it in San Francisco," he had said with that charming smile that had won her heart. "Sell it and add the money to our nest egg." She had sold the house for $800, and Gerald had insisted on depositing it immediately for safekeeping. She had thought him so responsible, so caring about their future. What a fool she had been. Mrs. Henderson, the boarding house owner, met her at the door with sympathy in her eyes. "The whole town knows, dear. I'm so sorry. That man seemed so proper, so respectable." "Did anyone see which direction he went?" Katherine asked, her voice hollow. "Stage east 3 days back." "He'll be halfway to anywhere by now." Mrs. Henderson touched her arm gently. "Your room is paid through the end of the week. After that." After that, Katherine had nothing. No savings, no house, no prospects. She nodded numbly and climbed the stairs to her small room, where her hope chest still sat packed with linens and dishes for a home that would never exist. She did not cry. The shock was too great for tears. Instead, she sat on the edge of the narrow bed and stared at her hands, the hands that had sewn thousands of stitches, scrubbed countless loads of laundry, worked themselves raw for a future that had been nothing but lies. A knock came at the door just as the sun was setting, painting the Nevada sky in shades of orange and purple. "Katherine," Mrs. Henderson's voice was soft. "There's a gentleman downstairs asking about seamstress work. I know you're not feeling up to it, but—" "I'll be right down," Katherine said, forcing herself to stand. She had no money. She could not afford to turn down work, no matter how her heart was breaking. The man waiting in the parlor was tall and rangy, with sun-weathered skin and dark hair that curled slightly at his collar. He held his hat in his hands, turning it awkwardly, and when he looked up at her approach, she saw eyes the color of winter sage, gray-green and unexpectedly kind. "Madam," he said, his voice a low rumble. "Name's Cole Campbell. I run a ranch about 10 miles north of here. My sister's getting married in 3 weeks, and she needs a dress made. Our mother passed 2 years back, and there's no one else to do it. I heard you're the best seamstress in Hawthorne." Katherine swallowed hard. 3 weeks. She would need to find a way to survive much longer than 3 weeks, but it was a start. I can do the work. What did your sister have in mind? Honestly, madam, I don't know much about dresses. She sent me with this. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket, along with a small cutting of ivory silk. She drew a picture of what she wants. Can you come out to the ranch tomorrow to take her measurements? I'll pay you $50 for the work, plus another $5 for the trip out and back. $55. It was generous, perhaps too generous. Katherine studied the man's face, searching for signs of deception, for the smooth charm that had fooled her so completely with Gerald. But Cole Campbell's face was open and honest, weathered by sun and wind, marked with the tired lines of a man who worked hard for his living. I'll need half the payment upfront to purchase materials, she said carefully. That's fair. He reached into his pocket and counted out $27 in gold coins, placing them on the small table between them. The sound of the coins was solid, real. I'll be by with the wagon at 8 tomorrow morning if that suits you. It suits me fine, Mr. Campbell. Thank you. He nodded and turned to leave, then paused at the door. Madam, I heard about what happened with that fellow who left town. I'm sorry for your trouble. A man who do that to a lady isn't worth the ground he walks on. Before Katherine could respond, he was gone, the door closing softly behind him. She stood alone in the parlor, staring at the gold coins glinting in the lamplight. It was not $3,000. It was not her house or her future, but it was something. It was a beginning. That night Katherine lay awake planning. She would make the most beautiful wedding dress she had ever created. She would do such fine work that other clients would come. She would rebuild slowly and carefully from nothing. She had done it once before, after her parents died. She could do it again. The alternative was to give up, to surrender to the despair that threatened to swallow her whole. And Katherine Zimmerman had not survived 24 years in the harsh Nevada territory by giving up. Cole Campbell arrived precisely at 8 the next morning, driving a sturdy wagon pulled by 2 well-kept horses. He helped Katherine up to the seat with a courtesy that seemed natural rather than calculated, and they set off north into the desert landscape. Your sister is lucky to have you handling the arrangements, Katherine said as the wagon rolled along the dusty road. Sarah's done a lot for me over the years. It's the least I can do. Cole's hands were steady on the reins, his attention on the road ahead. Our parents came out here in '68, started the ranch from nothing. After they passed, Sarah kept the house running while I managed the cattle. She deserves a proper wedding. What about you? No plans to marry? The question came out before Katherine could stop it, too personal for a near stranger. Cole's mouth quirked in something that might have been a smile. Haven't found the right woman yet. Most ladies don't take to ranch life. It's hard work, long days, and plenty of loneliness. Can't say I blame them for preferring town life. Katherine thought about her small room at the boarding house, about her empty bank account and stolen future. Some people don't have the luxury of choosing. He glanced at her then, those sage-colored eyes thoughtful. No, madam. I suppose they don't. They rode in comfortable silence for a while, the desert stretching out around them in shades of gold and rust. Mountains rose in the distance, purple against the bright sky. A hawk circled overhead, riding the thermals. It's beautiful out here, Katherine said softly. In its own way. It is, Cole agreed. Not everyone sees it, but if you look close, there's plenty of life, plenty of strength. Things grow here that couldn't survive anywhere soft. The Campbell Ranch appeared as a cluster of buildings against the stark landscape. A ranch house of weathered wood, a large barn, several outbuildings and corrals where cattle clustered around water troughs. It was not fancy, but it was well maintained. everything speaking of care and hard work. A young woman burst out of the house as they approached, her dark hair flying loose around her shoulders. "Cole, you found her. Oh, Miss Zimmerman, thank you so much for coming." Sarah Campbell was 20 years old, vibrant and full of excitement, talking so fast about her wedding plans that Katherine found herself smiling despite everything. They went inside the house, which was neat and simple, furnished with handmade furniture that showed skill and care. "My mother's wedding dress is too small for me," Sarah explained, pulling Katherine toward a bedroom. "And the style is so old-fashioned now. I want something beautiful, something that will make James catch his breath when he sees me." For the next 2 hours, Katherine took measurements, discussed fabrics and designs, sketched modifications to Sarah's drawing. The girl's enthusiasm was infectious, and Katherine found herself caught up in the creative challenge, her mind already planning the construction, the delicate pleating that would flatter Sarah's figure, the way the silk would catch the light. "You're going to look stunning," Katherine promised, and Sarah hugged her impulsively. "I'm so glad Cole found you. He said you're the best seamstress in 3 counties. Sarah's face grew more serious. "He also said you've had some trouble recently. If you need anything, Miss Zimmerman, you just say so. Cole's always helping people, and I'd like to help too." Katherine's throat tightened with unexpected emotion. "The work is help enough. Thank you, Sarah." Cole drove her back to town as the afternoon sun beat down relentlessly. Katherine clutched her notebook of measurements and sketches, her mind already planning the dress. "Sarah likes you," Cole said as they neared Hawthorne. "She's a good judge of character. She's lovely. You've raised her well. Can't take much credit. She was mostly grown when our folks passed. Stubborn as a mule, though. Gets that from our mother." He pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the boarding house. "Miss Zimmerman, if you're looking for more work, I could use someone to do mending and such at the ranch. I'm not handy with a needle, and Sarah's too busy with wedding preparations." "I'd pay fair wages." Katherine looked at him carefully. "Why are you being so kind to me, Mr. Campbell? We're strangers." He was quiet for a moment, his weathered hand still on the reins. "My father lost everything in a mining scheme when I was 12. Trusted the wrong man, invested money we didn't have. We almost lost the ranch. If it hadn't been for neighbors who gave him work, who helped us through, we wouldn't have made it." He met her eyes. "I know what it's like to start over from nothing. I know how much it means when someone gives you a chance." Something in Katherine's chest loosened, just a fraction. "I'll take the mending work, thank you. I'll bring a load by tomorrow." He tipped his hat to her. "Good day, Miss Zimmerman." That night, Katherine used some of her precious advance payment to buy fabric and trim for Sarah's dress. The mercantile owner, Mr. Dawson, had heard about Gerald's theft and extended her credit without her asking, his way of showing support. Small kindnesses, Katherine was learning, could feel like lifelines when you were drowning. She worked on the dress every evening after completing her other jobs, her needle flashing in the lamplight. The silk whispered under her fingers, taking shape according to her vision. She poured all her skill into it, all her determination to prove that she could still create beauty despite the ugliness that had been done to her. Cole brought mending as promised: shirts with torn seams, pants with holes worn through by hard work, socks that needed darning. The work was simple but steady, and he paid her promptly each week. Sometimes he stayed to talk for a few minutes, leaning against the boarding house porch rail, telling her about the ranch, about the cattle market, about Sarah's wedding preparations. Katherine found herself looking forward to those conversations. Cole was easy to talk to, not smooth or flattering like Gerald had been, but genuine. He listened when she spoke, and his quiet presence was oddly comforting. "How's the dress coming?" he asked one evening, 2 weeks into the project. "It's beautiful," Katherine said, unable to keep the pride from her voice. "Sarah's going to be radiant. I don't doubt it. You've got a real gift, Miss Zimmerman." He shifted his weight, suddenly awkward. "Listen, after the wedding, Sarah and James will be moving to his family's place in Carson City. The house is going to feel mighty empty with just me rattling around in it." Katherine waited, sensing he had more to say. "I was thinking, if you wanted, there's a room you could rent. It'd be cheaper than the boarding house, and you'd have space for your sewing. I know it's not proper for an unmarried woman to live in a bachelor's house, but I'd make sure everything was respectable. You'd have your privacy, and I'm gone most days anyway, seeing to the cattle." It was a generous offer, perhaps too generous. Katherine's instinct was to refuse, to protect herself from further vulnerability, but practicality warred with caution. The boarding house was expensive, eating through her meager earnings. A cheaper place to live would help her rebuild her savings faster. "Let me think about it," she said carefully. "Of course, no pressure either way." He tipped his hat. "See you next week, Miss Zimmerman." Katherine finished Sarah's dress 3 days before the wedding. When she brought it to the ranch for the final fitting, Sarah actually cried when she saw herself in the mirror. "Oh, Miss Zimmerman, it's perfect. It's more beautiful than I ever imagined." Sarah turned, watching the silk catch the light, the delicate embroidery glinting. "You're an artist." Cole had been in the barn, but Sarah called him in to see. He stopped in the doorway, his face softening as he looked at his sister. "You look just like Mama," he said quietly. "She'd be so proud." Sarah's eyes filled with tears again, and she hugged her brother fiercely. "I wish she could be here." "She is," Cole said, "in all the ways that matter." Katherine watched them, feeling like an intruder on a private moment, but also feeling something warm uncurl in her chest. This was what family looked like. This was what love looked like, not smooth words and empty promises, but showing up, being present, caring for each other through the hard times. The wedding took place on a bright Saturday morning at the little church in Hawthorne. Sarah was indeed radiant, and her groom James looked at her like she hung the moon and stars. Katherine sat in the back, watching them exchange vows, and felt the sharp pain of what she had lost warring with a strange new hope for what might still be possible. At the reception, held at the ranch with half the county in attendance, Cole sought her out. "Thank you for what you did for Sarah," he said. "The dress, I mean, but also for making her feel special. It meant a lot." "It was my pleasure. She's easy to care about." Cole looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable in his eyes. "You know that offer I made about renting the room? It still stands. Actually, I'd like to sweeten the deal. What if you set up a proper dressmaking shop there? There's a good-sized parlor that's barely used. You could meet clients there, do your work. I'd only charge you half what the boarding house costs, and you'd have the whole space." Katherine's heart beat faster. A proper shop. A place to build a real business. It was everything she needed, and yet. "Mr. Campbell, I appreciate your kindness, but I need to understand why you're doing this. You barely know me." He looked down at his boots, then back up at her, his sage eyes serious. "I do know you, Miss Zimmerman. I know you're the kind of person who gets knocked down and gets back up. I know you do beautiful work and treat people with kindness, even when you've been treated poorly. I know you're brave and stubborn and determined not to let one bad man define your future." He paused. "And I know I'd like the chance to know you better if you're willing." Katherine's breath caught. This was not a smooth seduction or a calculated play. This was honest interest from an honest man. It terrified her. "I don't know if I can trust my judgment anymore," she said quietly. "I was so wrong about Gerald." "That's fair," Cole said, "but maybe you could trust time instead. Move into the ranch, set up your shop, keep everything proper and businesslike. Take all the time you need to figure out if I'm someone worth trusting. I'm not going anywhere." It was the patience in his offer that decided her. Gerald had rushed her, swept her along with grand plans and urgent timelines. Cole was offering her time and space and the freedom to choose. "All right," she said. "I'll do it." Cole's face broke into a genuine smile, transforming his weathered features. "That's good news, Miss Zimmerman." "That's real good news." Katherine moved to the Campbell ranch the following week. True to his word, Cole had cleaned out the large parlor, setting it up with good light and a large table for her work. Her bedroom was upstairs, spacious and private, with windows overlooking the mountains. Cole's room was at the opposite end of the house, as far from hers as possible while still being under the same roof. "To keep everything respectable," he said, not quite meeting her eyes. "Mrs. Henderson from the boarding house will come by twice a week to help with cooking and cleaning. That way there's no question about propriety." Katherine appreciated his thoughtfulness. In a small town like Hawthorne, reputation mattered. One scandal with Gerald was enough for a lifetime. She threw herself into work, building her dressmaking business from the ground up. Word spread about Sarah's beautiful wedding dress, and clients began to appear, ranch wives wanting new dresses, young women needing alterations, mothers requesting christening gowns. Katherine's needle flashed constantly, her skills evident in every stitch. Cole worked his ranch with the same dedication, rising before dawn to tend the cattle, mending fences, managing the endless tasks that came with ranching in the harsh Nevada landscape. In the evenings, they would sometimes sit on the porch as the desert cooled, talking about their days. "You got that order from Mrs. Peterson finished?" Cole asked one evening in late September. "Finally. That woman changed her mind about the trim 4 times. Katherine stretched her sore shoulders. "But it's done now and she paid in full." "You're building something good here," Cole said. "I can see it taking shape." Katherine looked out at the darkening desert, at the first stars appearing in the vast sky. "I never thought I could start over. When Gerald left, I thought my life was over too, but maybe it's just beginning." "That fellow did you wrong," Cole said quietly. "But in a strange way, maybe he did you a favor. You wouldn't have ended up here otherwise." "Are you suggesting I should thank him?" Katherine asked with an edge of humor. "Hell no. I'm suggesting he's a damned fool and his loss is—" Cole stopped, cleared his throat. "His loss is my good fortune." Katherine's heart skipped. They had been carefully polite for weeks, maintaining proper distance despite living under the same roof. But she was increasingly aware of Cole, the way he moved, the sound of his voice, the rare smiles that lit his weathered face. She was also increasingly aware of her own feelings, the way her pulse quickened when she heard his footsteps, the way she found excuses to be in the kitchen when he came in for meals. It terrified her. She had been so wrong about Gerald. What if she was wrong again? But Cole was nothing like Gerald. Gerald had been all surface charm and grand promises. Cole was quiet competence and steady presence. Gerald had taken from her. Cole kept giving not just money for work, but respect, space, kindness without expectation of return. "Mr. Campbell," she said carefully, "I want to thank you for everything you've done for me. The work, the space, the chance to rebuild. It's meant more than I can say." "It's just Cole," he said, "and you don't need to thank me. You've earned every bit of it with your skill and hard work." He was quiet for a moment. "Katherine, if I may call you that, I want you to know I'm not rushing you. I meant what I said about taking all the time you need. But I also want to be honest. I care about you. I think about you more than I probably should. And when I imagine the future now, you're in it." Katherine's hands trembled slightly. "I care about you too. That's what frightens me. I know." Cole's voice was gentle. "But fear isn't always a warning. Sometimes it's just the price of trying again." They sat in the cooling evening, not touching but closer than they had been, and Katherine felt something shift inside her. Not trust yet, not entirely, but the beginning of it. The willingness to risk again. October brought cooler weather and more work. Katherine hired a young woman named Lily to help with the simpler sewing, freeing Katherine to focus on the more complex orders. The business grew steadily, and Katherine began putting money aside, building new savings to replace what Gerald had stolen. Cole taught her to ride one of the gentler horses, patient as she learned to sit the saddle properly, to read the horse's movements, to trust herself. They rode out together on Sunday afternoons, exploring the desert landscape, and Katherine discovered a freedom she had never known existed. "It's like flying," she said one day after a particularly exhilarating ride. Her cheeks were flushed, her hair escaping from its pins, and she felt gloriously alive. Cole looked at her with such open admiration that her breath caught. "You're something special, Katherine Zimmerman." "I'm just learning to ride," she protested, laughing. "No," he said seriously. "You're learning to live again. That takes more courage than most people ever find." In November, a letter arrived from San Francisco. Katherine recognized Gerald's handwriting on the envelope and nearly threw it in the fire unopened. But curiosity, or perhaps the need for closure, made her break the seal. The letter was full of excuses and self-pity. Gerald claimed he had been desperate, that he had gambling debts, that he had meant to pay her back but things had gone wrong. He did not exactly apologize, merely explained, as if understanding his reasons would make the theft acceptable. He ended by suggesting that perhaps they could still make things work, that he could come back to Nevada and they could start fresh. Katherine read it twice, waiting for the pain, for the anger, for something. Instead, she felt only a distant pity for the small, weak man revealed in those self-serving words. Gerald had not loved her. He had loved what she could give him. The difference seemed so obvious now, she wondered how she had ever missed it. She showed Cole the letter that evening. He read it silently, his jaw tightening. "Are you going to respond?" "No," Katherine said. "There's nothing to say. He's not worth the ink or paper." Cole folded the letter carefully and handed it back. "You deserve so much better than that." "I know," Katherine said, and realized with surprise that she meant it. "I'm worth more than he ever saw." Something changed between them after that, some final barrier falling away. Katherine stopped holding herself apart, stopped waiting for Cole to reveal some hidden flaw or ulterior motive. She let herself see him as he was a good man, a kind man, someone who showed his feelings through actions rather than words. They began spending more time together, not just in passing but deliberately. Cole would finish his work early to sit with her while she sewed, reading aloud from the newspaper or books. Katherine would pack lunches and ride out to wherever Cole was working, and they would eat together under the wide Nevada sky, talking about everything and nothing. In December, the first snow dusted the mountains, and the desert nights turned bitter cold. Katherine woke one night to find her bedroom window had blown open, snow swirling in, her blankets inadequate against the freezing air. She was struggling to close the warped window when Cole appeared, awakened by the noise. "Here, let me," he said, wrestling the window shut and latching it firmly. He looked at her shivering in her thin nightgown and disappeared, returning moments later with an armload of quilts from his own bed. "These should help." He spread them over her bed, his movements careful and respectful, never once making her feel vulnerable or uncomfortable. But when their hands accidentally brushed, Katherine felt the spark of it all the way through her. "Cole," she said quietly. He looked at her, and in his eyes she saw everything: longing, tenderness, desire tempered by patience, the careful control of a man who would wait forever if that was what she needed. Katherine stepped closer. "I trust you." 3 words, but they carried everything. Cole's face transformed, hope and joy breaking through his usual reserve. "Katherine," she kissed him then, standing on her toes to reach his lips, her hands on his chest feeling the rapid beat of his heart. He responded with a gentle hunger, his arms coming around her, holding her like she was precious and breakable and exactly where she belonged. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cole rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Katherine Zimmerman. I think I have since the day I first saw you trying so hard to be brave when your world had fallen apart." "I love you too," Katherine whispered. "I didn't think I could feel this way again. I didn't think I wanted to, but with you, everything is different." "Marry me," Cole said. "Not right away, not until you're absolutely sure, but someday. Marry me and let me spend the rest of my life proving you made the right choice." Katherine laughed through sudden tears. "Yes, someday when I'm sure." She kissed him again. "But I'm already almost sure." Cole left her room reluctantly, propriety still important even with promises between them. But Katherine lay under the pile of quilts, warmer than she had been in months, and felt something she had thought she would never feel again: hope for the future, bright and real and deserved. Christmas came, and Katherine made Cole a new shirt in deep blue that matched his eyes when the light hit them right. He gave her a beautiful silver thimble, delicate and perfectly crafted. "For the seamstress who's sewing a new life," he said, and Katherine cried and kissed him and felt absurdly, wonderfully happy. They married in February of 1884 in the same little church where Sarah had married James. It was a simple ceremony, with half the town in attendance, everyone who had watched Katherine rebuild from nothing, who had seen Cole's patient courtship, who approved of the match and wished them well. Katherine wore a dress of her own making, ivory silk embroidered with delicate wildflowers, the same flowers that would bloom in the desert come spring. Cole wore his new blue shirt and looked at her like she was everything he had ever wanted. "I promise to be worthy of your trust," he said when they exchanged vows. "Every day for the rest of my life." "I promise to be brave enough to love you," Katherine replied, "through everything that comes." Their kiss sealed more than a marriage. It sealed the death of old fears and the birth of new possibilities. The ranch house became truly home. Katherine's dressmaking business flourished in the parlor turned shop, and Cole's ranch prospered under his steady management. They worked side by side, partners in everything, and when the days were hard, and they were hard sometimes, because life in the Nevada territory was never easy, they faced the difficulties together. In November of 1884, Katherine discovered she was expecting a child. She told Cole on a Sunday evening, and he picked her up and spun her around, laughing with pure joy. "We're going to be parents," he kept saying, like he could not quite believe it. "We're going to have a family." Their son was born in July of 1885, during a blazing hot summer that turned the desert to shimmering gold. They named him Thomas, after Cole's father, and he had Cole's dark hair and Katherine's blue eyes. Katherine held him and marveled at the miracle of it, this tiny life, created from love, proof that beautiful things could grow from devastation. Cole was a devoted father, patient and tender with the baby, waking for night feedings, pacing the floor when Thomas was fussy, staring at his son with wonder. "I never imagined this," he told Katherine one night as they watched Thomas sleep in his cradle. "Being this happy. Having everything I ever wanted." "Neither did I," Katherine said, "especially not after Gerald. I thought happiness was something that happened to other people." "You made this happen," Cole said, pulling her close. "You were brave enough to start over, brave enough to trust again." That takes more strength than most people ever find. Katherine rested her head on his shoulder. We made it happen, together. Life settled into a rhythm of work and family, seasons passing with the turning year. Katherine's business continued to grow, and she hired 2 more seamstresses to help with the demand. Cole expanded the ranch, buying more land, improving the herds. They were not wealthy, but they were comfortable, and more than that, they were content. In 1887, Katherine gave birth to a daughter, Emma, who had Katherine's blonde hair and Cole's serious expression. Thomas, now 2, was fascinated by his baby sister, wanting to help with everything. Sarah and James visited often from Carson City, bringing their own growing family. The house rang with laughter and children's voices, with the sounds of life being lived fully and gratefully. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors, Thomas playing in the yard and Emma sleeping in Katherine's arms, Cole took Katherine's free hand. "You ever think about him?" he asked. "Gerald, I mean," Katherine considered. "Sometimes. But not with anger anymore. Mostly I just feel grateful." "Grateful?" Cole looked surprised. "If he hadn't stolen everything, I never would have needed a ranch 10 miles north of Hawthorne. I never would have met you. I never would have learned that I was strong enough to rebuild, brave enough to love again, capable of all this." She gestured at the ranch, at their children, at the life they had built together. "He took my money, but in doing so, he gave me something far more valuable. He gave me the chance to discover who I really was." Cole kissed her temple. "You always were that person, you just needed the chance to prove it. Maybe, but you gave me that chance. You helped me start over from nothing." "We helped each other," Cole said. "That's what love does. It makes us brave enough to try again." Katherine looked out at the desert landscape she had once found so harsh and unforgiving. Now she saw its beauty, the resilience of life in difficult places, the way strength grew from challenge, the unexpected blessings that could bloom in the most unlikely soil. "Tell me again," she said, leaning into Cole's warmth. "Tell you what?" "That we're going to grow old together on this ranch. That we'll watch our children grow up and have children of their own. That this happiness is real and permanent and ours to keep." Cole wrapped his arms around her and Emma, including Thomas in the embrace when the boy ran over. "We're going to grow old together on this ranch. We'll watch our children grow up and have children of their own. This happiness is real and permanent and ours to keep. I promise you, Katherine. For all the days I have left, this is our life, our home, our family." Katherine closed her eyes and believed him. Not because she was naive or desperate or willing to ignore warning signs, but because Cole had earned her trust one day at a time, one kindness at a time, one kept promise at a time. Because love was not always broken vows and stolen money. Sometimes it was steady hands and patient hearts, and the courage to build something new from ruins. The years passed, marked by small joys and occasional sorrows, by the rhythms of ranch life and the turning of seasons. In 1889, another son arrived named Henry, with blonde hair and sage-green eyes that mixed both his parents. In 1892, a second daughter, Caroline, completed their family, arriving during a rare spring snowstorm that left the desert white and sparkling. Katherine's seamstress business became the finest in 3 counties. Women traveled from as far as Reno and Carson City to have Katherine Zimmerman Campbell create their wedding dresses and special occasion gowns. She trained a dozen young women in the art of fine sewing, passing on her skills and providing them the same chance at independence she had needed so desperately years before. Cole's ranch became known for its quality cattle and Cole's fair dealing. He earned respect throughout the territory for his honesty and hard work, for the way he treated his ranch hands with dignity, for his willingness to help neighbors in need. Thomas grew tall and serious like his father, learning the ranch work with dedication. Emma inherited her mother's skill with a needle and her father's head for business, eventually taking over the management of the seamstress shop when Katherine wanted to slow down. Henry had his father's way with horses and his mother's artistic eye. Caroline, the baby, grew up fierce and independent, insisting on learning everything her brothers did and proving herself just as capable. In 1898, when Thomas was 13, a stranger rode up to the ranch asking for work. He was weathered and worn, his clothes shabby, his horse thin. Katherine was in the yard hanging laundry when he arrived, and something about him seemed familiar. Cole came out to meet him, and Katherine moved closer, her heart beginning to pound with recognition she did not want to acknowledge. "Name's Gerald Hutchins," the man said, not recognizing her. "Looking for ranch work. I'm willing to do anything, work hard, earn my keep." Katherine's hand went to her throat. 15 years had passed and Gerald looked 20 years older. Life had not been kind to him. His face was lined with dissipation, his eyes hollow, his hands shaking slightly. Whatever he had done with the money he stole, it had not brought him happiness. Cole glanced at Katherine, saw her expression, and understood immediately. His face hardened. "We don't have any work for you," Cole said firmly. "You'd best move on." Gerald's eyes finally found Katherine, and recognition dawned slowly. Katie Zimmerman." "Is that you?" "It's Cole Campbell now," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Gerald's face went through a series of changes: shock, shame, calculation. "Katie, I mean Katherine. I can't believe it's you. I've thought about you so often over the years. I'm so sorry for what I did. I was desperate, stupid. I've regretted it every day since." Katherine doubted that very much, but it did not matter anymore. She looked at this broken man, this stranger who had once stolen her future, and felt nothing but pity. "You should leave," she said quietly. "Please, I have nowhere else to go. I'm destitute. Just a few days' work, enough for a meal and a place to sleep." Gerald's voice turned wheedling. "You always had such a good heart, Katie. Surely you can forgive me." Cole stepped between Gerald and Katherine, his posture protective. "The lady asked you to leave. I suggest you do it now." "I just need a chance," Gerald said, desperation creeping in. "I've had such bad luck. Nothing's worked out. If I could just get back on my feet." "No," Katherine said, more firmly. "You stole $3,000 from me. You left me with nothing. I had to start my life over from scratch because of your selfishness and dishonesty." She moved to stand beside Cole, her hand finding his. "But I did start over. I built something better than I ever imagined possible. So in a way you gave me a gift, though that was never your intention. Then you forgive me." Hope sparked in Gerald's eyes. "I forgive you for my own peace, not for your comfort," Katherine said. "But forgiveness doesn't mean I owe you anything. You made your choices, Gerald. Now you live with the consequences, just as I've lived with mine." Gerald's face twisted with anger. "You always thought you were so much better than everyone else. Look at you now, playing lady of the manor. You owe me, Katie. If it wasn't for me, you never would have." "That's enough," Cole said, his voice like iron. "You got 10 seconds to mount up and ride out. After that, I call the sheriff, and we see if there's any outstanding warrants on you. My guess is there probably are." Gerald looked between them, seeing no softness, no opening for manipulation. Finally, he climbed back on his tired horse and rode away, his shoulders slumped in defeat. Katherine watched him go, Cole's arm around her shoulders, and felt the final piece of the past fall away. "Are you all right?" Cole asked gently. "Yes," Katherine said, and meant it. "I looked at him and felt nothing. No anger, no pain, nothing but relief that I'm here with you instead of wherever his choices would have taken me." Thomas came running from the barn where he had been watching. "Ma, was that the man who stole from you?" "Yes," Katherine said, "but it's all in the past now. He can't hurt us anymore." "Good," Thomas said fiercely. "Pa, teach me to shoot better. I want to be able to protect Ma and the girls if anyone ever tries to hurt our family." Cole smiled, proud of his son's protective instincts. "I'll teach you. But the best protection is building a life so full of good things that the bad cannot touch it. That's what your ma taught me." They walked back to the house together, the three of them, leaving Gerald's ghost behind in the dust. That night, after the children were in bed, Katherine and Cole sat on their porch as they had so many times before. The desert night was cool and clear, stars scattered across the sky like diamonds on black velvet. "I never told you the whole truth about why I helped you," Cole said suddenly. Katherine looked at him, curious. "What do you mean?" "That first day when I came to ask about Sarah's dress, I already knew about what Gerald had done. Mrs. Henderson told me when I asked if there was a seamstress in town. She mentioned your skills, but also your troubles." Cole took Katherine's hand. "The truth is, Sarah's dress could have waited. She had plenty of time. But when I heard your story, I thought about my father, about how people helped us when we had nothing. I wanted to do the same for you. So the urgent timeline was a lie." Katherine asked, but she was smiling. "Not entirely. Sarah did need a dress, but I could have given you more time." Cole looked down at their joined hands. "And then I met you, and you were so brave and beautiful and determined not to be broken, and I fell in love right then. Everything after that was just me trying to find ways to keep you close while giving you time to heal." Katherine laughed, tears pricking her eyes. "You schemed to help me. Guilty as charged." Cole grinned. "Are you angry?" "I'm grateful," Katherine said, kissing him. "You saw me when I was at my lowest, and you saw someone worth saving. That gift was worth more than all the money Gerald stole." "You saved yourself," Cole said seriously. "I just gave you a place to stand while you did it." They sat together in comfortable silence, the kind of silence that came from years of partnership, of knowing each other's thoughts and rhythms. "You ever regret it?" Katherine asked. "Saddling yourself with a woman who came with so much baggage?" Cole pulled her closer, his answer unhesitating. "Not for one single second. You're the best thing that ever happened to me, Katherine Campbell. You and our children and this life we built together. I'd live through everything again exactly the same way if it meant ending up here with you." Katherine rested her head on his shoulder, watching the stars, feeling the solid warmth of him beside her, hearing the sounds of their children sleeping safely inside their home. "I love you," she said simply. "I love you too," Cole replied. "Today, tomorrow, and all the days after that." The years continued their steady march. The children grew and eventually began families of their own. Thomas married a rancher's daughter from Virginia City and took over running the cattle operation with his father. Emma married a lawyer from Carson City, but kept her hand in the seamstress business, training her own daughters in the craft. Henry started his own horse ranch on land adjacent to the family property. Caroline, true to her independent nature, became a teacher, traveling to mining camps and small towns to educate children who otherwise would have had no schooling. Katherine and Cole aged gracefully together, their love deepening with each passing year. They became the heart of their extended family, the center around which children and grandchildren orbited. The ranch house echoed with multiple generations, with stories told and retold, with the laughter of grandchildren playing in the same yard where their parents had played. In 1910, on their 26th wedding anniversary, Cole surprised Katherine with a gift. It was a small wooden box, beautifully carved, and inside was $3,214 in gold coins. "What is this?" Katherine asked, confused. It's what Gerald stole from you, Cole said. The exact amount. I've been setting it aside for years, a bit at a time, from ranch profits. I wanted you to have it back, not because you need it, but because you deserve to have it in the first place. Katherine stared at the gold, gleaming in the afternoon light streaming through the windows. Then she closed the box and pushed it back across the table to Cole. "This belongs to both of us," she said firmly. "Everything we have, we built together. There's no yours and mine anymore. There's only ours." Cole's eyes glistened with emotion. "You're something special, Katherine Campbell. Have I told you that lately?" "Not since this morning," Katherine said, smiling, "but I never get tired of hearing it." They donated the money to the town of Hawthorne to build a school, naming it after Cole's parents, who had believed in hard work and community and helping your neighbors. It stood as a testament to what could be built from loss, to the way one person's cruelty could be transformed into something that blessed future generations. Katherine continued working, though at a slower pace, her hands now gnarled with arthritis but still skilled. She taught her granddaughters to sew, passing on not just the technical skills but the philosophy behind them, that a woman with skills in her hands could never be truly helpless, that independence and self-sufficiency were worth more than any man's promises, that rebuilding was always possible if you had courage and determination. Cole worked the ranch until his body told him it was time to let his sons take over. He spent his days mentoring his grandsons, teaching them about cattle and horses and the land, but also about honor and integrity and treating people with respect. In 1915, 32 years after Gerald's theft had left Katherine destitute, she and Cole sat on their porch watching the sunset, as they had done thousands of times before. Their bodies were older, slower, marked by the passage of years. But their hands still fit together perfectly, and their love had only grown stronger with time. "You remember the first time we sat here together?" Cole asked. "I remember everything," Katherine said. "I remember being terrified to trust you. I remember thinking my life was over. I remember the exact moment I realized I was falling in love with you." "When was that?" Cole asked, curious. "It was the night with the window, when you brought me your quilts, the way you took care of me without asking for anything in return. That's when I knew you were different from anyone I'd ever met." Cole smiled. "I knew I loved you the first time I saw you trying to be brave in Mrs. Henderson's parlor. You were so determined not to break, and I wanted to be the one to make sure you never had to." They watched the sky turn gold and orange and purple, the colors washing over the desert landscape they had called home for so long. "We've had a good life," Katherine said softly. "The best life," Cole agreed. "Better than I ever imagined possible." "You think Gerald ever found happiness?" Katherine wondered. Cole was quiet for a moment. "I don't know. I hope he found peace at least. Carrying that kind of shame and regret is its own punishment." Katherine squeezed his hand. "I'm glad I forgave him, not for his sake but for mine. Carrying anger would have poisoned what we built together." "That's the difference between you and him," Cole said. "You chose to build. He chose to take, and in the end, choosing to build is always the better path." They sat together as the stars began to appear one by one in the darkening sky. Somewhere inside, their grandchildren were laughing, their children were visiting, the house full of life and love and the accumulation of years well spent. Katherine thought back to that terrible day in the bank, when she had thought everything was lost. She thought about the long, difficult journey from that moment to this one. She thought about all the times she had wanted to give up, all the moments of doubt and fear, all the hard work and determination it had taken to rebuild. And she thought about Cole, patient and steady and true, who had seen her worth when she could not see it herself, who had given her the space to heal and the courage to try again, who had loved her through everything. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" Cole asked. "For giving me a reason to believe in good men. For showing me that starting over didn't mean settling for less, but reaching for more. For loving me when I was broken and staying with me while I healed. For all of it." Cole lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "Thank you for being brave enough to trust me. For choosing to build a life with me. For being the best partner, the best wife, the best mother I could have ever asked for. For all of it." They sat together as the night deepened. Two people who had found each other at exactly the right moment, who had built something beautiful from the ashes of betrayal, who had proven that love could heal even the deepest wounds. The Wild West was a hard place, unforgiving and challenging, where survival took grit and determination, and no small amount of luck. But it was also a place where people could start over, where the past did not have to define the future, where a woman who had lost everything could find not just recovery, but joy. Katherine Zimmerman had been betrayed by a man she trusted. She had lost her savings, her home, her plans for the future. She had been left with nothing but her skills and her determination. And then Cole Campbell had appeared, offering her a chance, asking for nothing in return, seeing her not as a victim but as a survivor. Together, they had built a life far richer than any bank account, a love far more valuable than stolen gold. Years later, when Katherine was 80 years old and Cole was 83, they sat on their porch one final time as the sun set over the Nevada desert. Cole's health had been failing, and they both knew their time together was drawing to a close. "No regrets?" Cole asked, his voice weaker now but still warm with love. "Not a single one," Katherine said, holding his hand. "Every moment with you has been a gift, even the hard times. Especially the hard times. They taught us what we were made of. They showed us what really mattered." Katherine looked at him, this man who had been her partner for 56 years, who had helped her start over from nothing and build a life beyond her wildest dreams. "You were the best thing that ever happened to me, Cole Campbell." "Right back at you, Katherine Campbell," Cole said, smiling. "Right back at you." He died peacefully 3 days later, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, with Katherine holding his hand just as she had held it through decades of marriage. She mourned him deeply, but without bitterness. They had had their time together, and it had been enough. Katherine lived another 5 years, dying at 85, still sharp-minded and independent to the end. Her legacy lived on in her children and grandchildren, in the businesses she had built, in the women she had trained and empowered, in the school that bore the Campbell name. But perhaps her greatest legacy was the story itself, passed down through generations of her family, the story of a woman who had everything stolen from her, who refused to be destroyed by betrayal, who started over from nothing with courage and determination. And the story of a man who saw her worth, who offered help without expectation, who loved her patiently until she was ready to love in return. It was a story about trust rebuilt and lives remade. About the Wild West, not as a place of lawlessness and violence, but as a place where people could reinvent themselves, where hard work was rewarded, where love could bloom even in harsh soil. It was a story that reminded people that endings could become beginnings, that loss could lead to discovery, that the worst betrayal could somehow lead to the greatest blessing. And most importantly, it was a story about choosing hope over despair, about having the courage to try again, about believing that starting over from nothing could lead to everything. Katherine Zimmerman Campbell's life had not gone as planned. The man she trusted had stolen all her savings. But a cowboy named Cole Campbell had helped her start over from nothing. And together, they had built something far more precious than money, a love that lasted a lifetime, a family that spanned generations, and a legacy of courage that would never be forgotten. In the end, Gerald's theft had not destroyed her. It had simply cleared the way for her real life to begin. And that life, built on trust earned and love freely given, had been worth every difficult moment of the journey. Their story became legend in Hawthorne, Nevada, told and retold as an example of the best the Wild West had to offer, not gunfights and outlaws, but ordinary people doing extraordinary things, building lives of meaning and purpose from whatever materials they had, loving each other through hardship and joy, proving that character mattered more than circumstance. The ranch still stood generations later, passed down through the Campbell family, a testament to everything Katherine and Cole had built together. And on quiet evenings, when the desert sun painted the sky in brilliant colors, family members would sometimes gather on that same porch where Katherine and Cole had spent so many evenings together, and they would tell the story again. The story of a woman who lost everything and found something better. The story of a man who saw worth where others saw ruin. The story of two people who built a life from nothing, who proved that love could heal and courage could triumph and starting over could lead to happiness beyond imagination. It was a story worth telling, worth remembering, worth passing down because it was true,